Greg Gard adding some ammunition in the recruiting class of 2025. We're going to talk about it and more, plus expansion talk on today's Locked On Badgers. Let's go.
You are Locked On Badgers, your daily podcast on the Wisconsin Badgers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to Locked On Badgers, your team every day, sometimes multiple times a day. It's been a heavy news cycle for a minute here. Do want to welcome everybody in. I'm your host, Ryan Herrings, as always. Really do appreciate it. Let's get Justin in and let's just start chopping it up because we have things to discuss, my friends. How are you?
We do. I'm doing good. How we doing, people?
I'll tell you how we're
Fire
doing.
the recruiting cannons. Another one is headed to Madison on Wisconsin.
Listen, it's a special show when we can fire the cannons for basketball.
An unexpected one. Yeah.
We don't get to do it often. Zach Kinziger. I think that's pronounced Kinziger. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that.
Kinziger, I think is how it's pronounced.
Okay, Kinziger. A 6'3", 175-pound in-state shooting guard, 25 class. Commits to the Badgers. Interesting get. Not a big offer list yet, although there are some bigger name schools that have started to kind of poke around there. So I think the offer list could have potentially grown. Interesting player. Justin, are you excited about this start to the class?
I like him. I look at his film, and what I saw with him is I see a guy who's got a real nice quick release. I think he's got a better handle than Connor already. You and I talked about him, and I said, I think worst case, you're looking at a guy who's a really good bench player, and the top end of this is probably somebody that could be similar to Connor. I don't think he's going to have quite that release, and I think Connor's a little craftier as a player, but I think Kinziger has got a better handle. I think he'll be a better defender day one when he comes in. So two things there that I think really help. I mean, would you be shocked if he ends up being a little like Klesmet type player?
I think that's a fair projection potentially. Probably a bit of a different player. Dom says, What's up, y'all? What's up, Dom? Thanks for joining in, my friend. I will point out one of the notes I made before the show. He's been doing really well in the EYBL. The EYBL is an elite.
Second leading scorer.
Yeah, 17.1 points per game, I believe it is.
He's a pure shooter.
That's an elite collection of amateur talent. So actually, Mason Sensala put that up here. Mason says, averaged more points in the EYBL than highly touted prospect Cooper Flagg, one of the most efficient scorers in the country. Badgers got him before he was going to blow up. It's a similar – you would say a similar thing about Jack Robertson, not in the EYBL, but a guy that the Badgers got before he could have blown up a little bit more, a good scorer. I would say this. Let me give you my good and my I don't want to say bad, my worrisome. And I also want to point out that I certainly need to watch more film here and talk to more people. This is my first kind of take. But I like the tools in the bag, right? Mm-hmm. Scored a lot of different ways, is able to shoot from three. Good range, pretty nice shot, good form, but also gets to the mid-range, finishes around the rim, pretty good size, can stop and pop, has a mid-range game, showed a bit of a step back into a three, shooting off the move. So I think there's a lot of offensive skill here, which translates to the next level. Mm-hmm. The worrisome part for me, and I don't know if it's a big deal or not, I don't know if he's a point guard. I don't think he's quite a point guard, and I don't think he's
a combo
size to be a really – I would like a little bigger shooting guard. I think he's a little smaller than a Siege, and I think he's 6'2"-ish. Might be of a bit. Defensively, it might be a bit of a gray area there, and I wonder about the athleticism that might limit the ceiling a little bit. But I think it's a good get.
Do you think physically it kind of projects closer to like Gasser?
Yeah, I'll tell you this:
6'3" guy who's probably a solid athlete, but not super flashy.
Mm-hmm. I tell you this, when I see, and we talked about this off the air. When I see highlight films of breakaway layups, it just makes you want – like he's not an NBA athlete, which is fine, by the way. That the Badgers have made hay with guys who aren't quite NBA elite athletes, right? So I really do like the get-up. I'm not trying to be the pickup, sorry. I'm not trying to be overly negative. I think there's a lot of offensive skill. I think there's good size. I think he's going to be an impactful college player and a scorer if he continues developing. But I don't know if the ceiling's there as an elite shooting guard.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. And hey, neither one of us is going to be sad if he turns into a stud. But I think he's got a very high floor. And you look at him and he's a guy who's this is not going to end up being a wasted scholarship. This is a guy who is going to provide value to the team for sure. There's just too much talent there from a how developed he is currently. He's a little like Brad Davison is coming in. He's probably got a little more ceiling than Brad did, but he comes in and you look at him and it's like, this guy's going to play a lot for us.
Yeah, I love that take because I think he and Cannon says, love the late shows, keep me entertained, let's go. I do think he's going to play a lot, and that's a recruiting win, right?
Mm-hmm.
The term role player gets thrown around a lot in basketball, much like game manager for quarterbacks at the college level, right? But there is such a thing as an elite role player, a great role player, and that is incredibly valuable to a basketball team. It's not belittling. Like, I think he's going to do a lot of things that help winning basketball. He's going to space the court. He's going to play defense. He's going to be versatile. He can score in different ways. He's going to put pressure on defenses. So in a lot of ways, he's going to make everybody around him better. And I do really like this pickup. He just can't be the high upside guy of the class.
He's not your primary scorer, but he's a guy that most definitely, I would not be shocked if he's going to have multiple games where he has 3, 4, 5 threes in a game because he's a knockdown shooter.
Mm-hmm.
Like this is another guy that if you get some dudes that can provide some athleticism on the court is going to be highly productive because he's going to get easy opportunities.
Mm-hmm. And I like, again, like there's value in projectability, right? There's value in kind of knowing what you're getting from a guy. You can't take a class full of athletic upside guys who don't have skill and hope you can develop them all. You need players, especially at Wisconsin. You need players who you have a really good feeling are going to be able to come in and play at a consistent level to set the floor, to set the foundation. And then you augment it with an AJ Storr. You augment it with a Nolan Winter. And I think that's a winning formula in Wisconsin. So, and the other thing I'd say really quick is how many times have we talked about Greg Gard's ability to evaluate early, like this staff's ability to evaluate early. They're in on him early. This is a plan A target for them, and I feel pretty good about that.
One of the other things I really like about him is he plays with nice pace. And what I mean is that he doesn't ever get out of sorts when you watch him with the ball in his hands. Doesn't dribble into guys and stuff like that. Like if you watch his camp footage from when he was at the Wisconsin camp, you'll see guys who are moving too fast for their own good, and it ends up getting him into bad situations. That's not what you're getting here. This is a guy who's understands what he's trying to do on the court and knows where he wants to go with the ball and just makes the smart play at his pace. It does not get sped up by anybody on the court.
Yeah, I think that's well said. Badger says late night with Ryan and friends, and he's got the beer emoji. Yep, best believe it. Adam Otto says Badgers After Dark. Keith Janke says love it. Tyler Strieber, Badgers After Dark. You guys are amazing. Really do appreciate it. Zach Bartz, Kinziger is a solid add to start this class. May not be the flashiest guy, but he's a solid scorer, lighting it up in the EYBL. Was the leader on an undefeated team. That's a good point. His high school team went 30-0, state title. Like you like getting kids from that pedigree. I think winners know how to win, right? You don't have to get them in college and then teach them how to be part of a winning culture. We've seen the football side get a lot of state championship level players as well. I think that's a good culture, locker room thing. Don't Badger Me says, he says, hey guys, this was. I think there we go. Here's the second part of the statement. He said, hey guys, this was positive news after losing Jackson McAndrew. Yeah, it's a nice get for Greg Gard for sure. Justin, there was a comment in here about, does he remind you of Zach Showalter? I think Showalter was more athletic.
Yeah, he was much more explosive. I think he's a far better shooter than Showalter was coming in. Showalter's a solid shooter by his senior year, but he was not the same type of scorer.
Yep, sorry. Yeah, I had to mute for a sec, but yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of skill here, and this adds to a trend of skill that has been coming really the last 2.5 classes, right? 2 classes. Greg Gard has focused on bringing in shooters, bringing in skill, and it has a chance to be a really good shooting team overall. We're going to take a quick break for our friends of the show. Come back. We have a bunch more comments. We're going to talk football practice updates. Where is Justin on his Everest confidence meter? We'll ping him on that one. Plus, some more thoughts on expansion. Let us know in the comments section. Are you feeling good with this latest expansion for the Big Ten? But first, we're going to get into a quick break for our friends of the show over at LinkedIn. And listen, we've talked about you have to get the right pieces in place for a long time. That's what LinkedIn's all about. These days, every small hire, small businesses, you have to make the right hires. You have to get the right people in. And that's what LinkedIn is for. Every hire, every opportunity to interview people, LinkedIn can help you get the right people in the door faster and quicker and easier. And it's why small businesses continue to rank LinkedIn number one among leading competitors for delivering quality hires. They have screening tools that help you get rid of all the stuff that doesn't need to be in there. Justin talked about the spaghetti strain or the colander. Is that the colander? Colander that gets rid of all the stuff you don't want. You keep the spaghetti. The spaghetti are the good candidates. That's what you want to be interviewing. You don't want to be interviewing the dirty spaghetti water. That's what LinkedIn's here for. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, let's keep this going. Justin, I was told I should call you the Big Ragu for your cooking knowledge.
No, that is definitely not accurate. I am by no means any type of real chef.
All right, let's get into some football practice thoughts. Let's just go back and forth with things that have interested us over the first 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
Let me start with one and this is one we both talked about off air, so this is an easy one. Bryson Green looks every bit the part. Like, he looks every bit as advertised. Big, physical, potential number one receiver. Let's go.
He is, I would say, going back, he could be better than Cephas this year. Like that type. When the footage we've seen of him, just some of the things that he looks like he's going to be able to do. And Cephas was great. I think Bryson Green is a guy who could be a top 3 round pick by the time all is said and done. Like, I think he's has a little bit more top speed than what Cephas did, which was really the thing that held him back. He's just a brute out on the field. Like, when Cephas was a physical dude and this guy's 10 pounds heavier than him and shorter, that kind of tells you all you need to know. But he can go up and make plays, and he's gonna be more physical and stronger than anyone that's across from him the entire season. Like, there's not going to be a corner that's going to go out there that's going to be 6'2", standing across from him that's going to be able to do things to him, unless you're going to throw safety on him. And we're not putting him in the seam most likely. So that's probably not going to happen.
It is nice to be able to create some mismatches, right? What other schools have done for a long time in the conference, the Penn State, the bigger receivers, Ohio State. Luke Fickell was talking about, he had post-practice availability today, and they asked about, I forget who did, but somebody asked about Bryson Green, and you can just see there's times where you can read
face lights up,
and he's like
giggling. He's like,
like the kid, he's the 4-year-old who unwrapped like a remote control car for Christmas. Right. He's like, oh yeah, this is what we were waiting for.
Yeah.
All right, give me something from your end that's intrigued you through the first 3 days here.
The defense sounds like it's been great so far. And there has been some positives that we've seen from the offense too. Mainly the running game looks like it's going to be legit. The offensive line looks like it has talent and is going to play up this year. But the defense sounds like it's going to be very athletic and fast. And the corners sound like they're going to be very physical and aggressive, which is something that we have been waiting for. These guys to be able to come up and make plays. And it sounds like we hit on some of those transfers. Now it's early. We'll see how it plays out the rest of camp, but like Forkeren and some of these other guys are making plays, and that's what you really want to see come in from guys that you're hoping to provide depth. Is early on they're still feeling their way through the system and they're making plays. So if we can find a couple of guys that can really add to the depth of the corner room, I feel really good about it, because I think the starting guys that we have right now are going to be great. I think this is going to be a top 15 defense when all is said and done.
I mean, if it's a top 15 defense with the offense that we're hopeful to put on the field, this team's going to be ridiculously dangerous.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Nizer Forkeren, the Division II transfer, he was exciting. He was a Division II All-American, came in as really good size, definitely somebody who's interesting. There's the bad clip of him trying to guard Will Pauling in the corner of the end zone, but Will Pauling's going to do that to a lot.
That's not fair.
It's right. That's what I'm saying. Will Pauling's going to do that to a lot of people. So I think he's a good get. It is interesting, right? Whenever you talk about practice, if the defense is doing good, inherently it means maybe the offense is struggling a little bit, which we're going to talk about. I do want to get to this comment here. This is from Guy. He says, what's on the whiteboard? Very quickly, I managed to sneak into Big Ten headquarters, found a secret agenda. So you can see they've added all these schools here. I think they're going to expand into Canada and annex that country at some point, the Big Ten Empire. They're getting some boat insurance they still have to get for PJ because that thing's sinking. And eventually they're just taking over the world. So that is what's on my whiteboard right here. Let's get back into these. Here's another one that I enjoyed seeing because we have talked about him so much. Really from the moment he committed to the moment he decommitted to the moment he recommitted. I've thought for a long time Jamal Howard is very possibly likely going to play this year. I think he brings unique special skills. Seeing him in practice and also looking pretty good. I feel good about my Jamel Howard as long as he can stay healthy. He got dinged up today, but I feel pretty good about my Jamel Howard is going to play this year more than 4 games. I think you went over on that as well.
Yeah, I think that the big thing with him is how are the guys ahead of him going to play this year? Because I think they'll reserve time on him if they can. But if he is showing out and the guys ahead of him are just a guy, then yeah, he's going to find his way onto the field because there's some physical tools there that the other 2 guys don't have. And this is a weird year for defensive line. Like we could legitimately not have a true nose guard for most of the season. Like we could be stuffing guys that are big defensive ends in the middle if we play the 2-4-5. So, I mean, there's some really weird things that we may do from alignment standpoints. But, Jamel is a guy who, the sky's the limit for him in terms of what he provides. And if we can get Neal to play at a high level and we can get Paez to play at a high level too, then maybe the defensive line is going to be better than we thought. It sounds like Rodas Johnson's had a really good start to camp too.
Yeah, we've heard that every camp.
I know we have. I understand. We agree with this. I did. No, I'm not getting sucked in. He's got to prove it to me.
Right.
But I think there's some tools there with him. It will be interesting to see how the defensive line is utilized if we find out that these guys were being held back by scheme before, or maybe there's a little more under the hood than we thought. And I would love to see that. But we'll find out. These guys are going to have to show it on the defensive line. It'd be great if we didn't have to rely on just the outside linebackers or middle linebackers to create pressure.
I agree. We've talked about that a lot. My next takeaway here, let's talk quarterbacks a little bit. Mordecai sounds like he's been solid, not spectacular, but solid. And then Braden Locke had a really rough day today. Multiple picks, was pulled. Again, 2 interesting things here. The first is I would say it doesn't bother me that much. Locke he's a redshirt freshman in a first year in this system against a pretty seasoned defense. So Mama said there's going to be days like this. I'm not that worried about it. And he's not the starter this year. Like that, if he was the starter and that was the scouting report, you'd say, "Oh my gosh, he's not the starter. It's fine." The other one that is interesting, though, and we've talked about this, but Burkett still ahead of Evers, right? It sounds like Burkett got some second-team reps. Evers got some fourth-team reps. Again, I've said it before. I don't think the writing's going to be on the wall there with Evers. And I know it's early. I'm not closing the book, and I'm not rooting against him. But I think we're seeing something here that's developed into a trend.
Yeah, him not pushing for third-team reps is concerning to me. Like you've now had since spring ball to kind of get your grasp of the offense, and the fact that you can't get on the field to show even on third-team reps starts to make me wonder what exactly is the holdup here. Are you just struggling to grasp what's going on? I will say this. I think offensively, I don't have many worries about Mordecai and Locke. Even, I think these guys are just kind of getting in rhythm with the offense. It's a lot easier to do that on defense than it is the offense because you're so reliant on the other guys to be in the spots that you're expecting. And I think that guys just get naturally kind of into a certain pace on offense. Like you get comfortable with what you're going to expect to see. And the defense kind of dictates, its own speed for the most part. They are reacting to you and just going. Whereas offense kind of has to be in rhythm and in timing. So it can take a little bit for those guys to start clicking. If this is still rough like this in a week, then we can start to look at it and be like, all right, at some point this has got to start clicking. And I'm not saying it has to be all world, but it needs to start sounding more consistent and that they're getting more wins. But I do think that the offense has players, and I think that they'll get it done. There's so many weapons this year that they're going to have especially at wide receiver.
Mm-hmm. I think that's very well said in terms of the timing of this. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to come back, Justin, and your comments on expansion. A lot to get into there. Justin definitely disagrees with me on some of the points, but a bunch of comments in that agree with me, Justin. So maybe we just focus on those. That's coming up next on Locked On Badgers. Make sure you stay tuned for that, plus your comments. But first, we're going to get into our friends of the show, good friends of the show over at eBay Motors. I've talked several times about getting carjacked. Listen, my car got destroyed almost. My Trans Am, I had named her April. If I had eBay Motors, I could have had a much easier job getting my car back together, because eBay Motors is there to find the right fit for every part on your car. You don't have to fumble around with a bunch of different makes and models. You just go to eBay Motors, guaranteed fit, and you add your car to My Garage and look for the green check to know which part will fit or your money back. There's over 122 million parts to choose from. You'll be back in the game in no time. I could have got my carjacked car back in the game, and it's easy to bring home a win when the right parts are guaranteed. Just like in sports, you need the right parts. eBay is there to get you the right parts for your car, whether it's just due to an old car or like me, getting carjacked. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions do apply. All right, Justin, let's get some expansion talk here. I went live today because I was just so amped up about it.
You had me feeding you tweets all day long about what's going on, and Ryan's like, "No, this needs to stop."
I'm like that meme that's like, no, please stop. I don't love it to recap. I don't think those schools move the needle a ton, and I don't think it needed to happen right now. But Justin,
don't tell that to the Oregon and Washington people who think that they are gracing us with their presence.
I already have some comments in my live show. Let's see, it was now that Washington's here, the real UW's here. I have another one that said Wisconsin is getting knocked down several more pegs. That was from an Oregon fan. So yeah, I already have several comments, but I get that from fan bases, right? Yeah. Justin, where are you at on this? And then I want to get into a bunch of your comments as well.
Well, I think it significantly boosts the middle part of the Big Ten. And we talked about this, and I compared it to the composite ranking on 247. What this does is it dilutes the bottom of the Big Ten. The teams that we looked at that were kind of dead weight, that like a win against, like for Wisconsin beating Indiana or Purdue or Rutgers or whoever, that doesn't move the needle nationally as a win when you're looking at a resume for going into the playoffs. A win against Washington or Oregon for any team in the Oregon. I gotta stop. Oregon.
You got black for that, by the way.
I know. It's got to be, that's the type of win that's going to move the needle. That's going to be considered a quality win going forward. I think it helps to balance out the Big Ten in general if you're looking to go back to divisions or whatever. Because if we're going to do it geographically, the West was the side that was a problem. Well, now if you're adding Washington or Oregon and USC, you can now say that that's getting much closer to being balanced. Wisconsin legitimately would have teams on that side that you can look at and be like, hey, they run the table with this group. They've accomplished something. So you're getting a lot more balance from the conference in terms of what teams are looking at going forward. It's going to give more opportunity to stack quality wins in a season. So you have more opportunity that if you do stub your toe against somebody, you can still keep yourself in it. Whereas like if Wisconsin would have lost a game against anybody but Ohio State and Michigan before, we're pretty much out for the season. Like one loss was basically going to cost us any hope of a playoff.
Well, outside of maybe a Penn State or a good Iowa team. I mean, there are some, but your point is taken. The bottom of the Big Ten stinks.
It does.
It does. And I do. That is a point that I very much agree with you on. If you're just looking at it from a merit standpoint, Washington and Oregon are far more deserving of being in a good football conference than Indiana, Illinois,
Maryland,
Rutgers, honestly, Nebraska at this point.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a very good point. Northwestern, what is going on here? Let's get a couple of these comments here. I want to react to some more of these comments talking about conference expansion. This one here was from Bird Dogger. Notre Dame and Clemson to round out the Big 20. Followed up with because I know you want to talk about Notre Dame, so I wanted to get a couple Notre Dame comments on here. Followed up with Mark D that said, "Please know my dad is a Notre Dame grad, and I wouldn't hear the end of it." So I've been on record as saying I would love Clemson and Notre Dame in the Big Ten. I think those would be huge gets. I think they would open up recruiting opportunities in the Southeast, and I think Notre Dame is one of the 10 most marketable programs in college football. So where are you at on potentially still going after Clemson, Notre Dame? Good idea, bad idea, and where are you at on the hubris of Notre Dame? I know you wanted to talk about that as well.
Well, I mean, they're hands down the most arrogant fan base I've ever seen. Like they basically have this attitude that they can come trotting into the Big Ten anytime they want to. And I don't agree with that standpoint. I think there is a legitimate point where the Big Ten says we have too many teams. and we don't need you anymore. We have enough quality depth in the league that, yes, it would be great to have you as a flagship program, but we don't need you to get any of the teams that we have here to where we want them to go. So any of our top teams have a good season, they're going to the playoff. It just is what it is. Now, I also think that there's look at it this way. If Notre Dame was this desirable, their TV deal would show the same as what we're seeing for every share that the Big Ten has. It's not, because a lot of it is dependent on the teams that they play, which their schedule stinks. It just does. They don't really play anybody unless they play Clemson throughout their schedule. That's really the only team that moves the needle if USC is no longer on their schedule due to being in the Big Ten. So if you're looking at it, you have one team that you can really look at and be like, that's going to be a good game. Everybody else is kind of, they should win that game. They're going to be a 7 or more than 7 point favorite going into the game. I just think if we get to 24 teams, they're out. I'd be shocked if we got to that. I think legitimately at this point, the only way we go to 24 is with a team like Clemson and Notre Dame. And that would be if we took 2 other teams, and I don't know who we would take right now. Like, there's legitimately nobody that I look at that I'm like, yeah, this is a team that we have to take to get to 20. I suppose if they're really big on the Florida teams, one of the Florida teams, that might move the needle, but I'm not sure how gung-ho they are to take any of those teams.
I think getting into Florida from a recruiting standpoint would be huge. I think that'd be the reason to do it. Bo Dragon does say, I'd rather watch UW play Oregon than Indiana.
Yep, that's exactly how I feel.
That speaks to your point there, Justin, and that's a valid take. I will say this. I think Notre Dame has an open invite to any conference they want whenever they want because of their brand. I hear your point. There might be a spot where if we continue growing it, I just think Notre Dame is still
right now it is for sure.
Yeah,
it definitely is for sure.
Right, I don't like them, but I think they're that marketable. Poach Rakin says they should have checked Northwestern, Indiana, and Rutgers, send them to the Who Cares 12. That's awesome. Dom says, I agree. Kathleen Burrows says they can't divide the Big into the East-West again. That flopped.
That's going to be 3. It's going to have to be.
Yeah,
or 4. 3 or 4. It's going to be dependent upon how they have to do it geographically, but they'll figure something out.
Let's see. A couple more interesting things in here with expansion. Greg Lincecum says, could we possibly pull a couple teams from the SEC? I would be shocked if that happened.
Who would you want? Like, the teams that we would actually be able to pull are not going to be teams that we want to add. Like,
the SEC would give us Vanderbilt, but that doesn't help us.
Yeah. Do we want Missouri? No.
Missouri wants us.
Yeah, exactly.
No,
like, there are teams that are in these divisions. Like, nobody that's a top team from another conference is likely to come other than the ones that we just grabbed. Clemson, I suppose, would be one that you could mark down, but I feel like that's going to be kind of, if we get Clemson or Florida State, it's going to be because of politics involved, and those other schools that are in those states don't want to deal with them coming in. They want to be the number 1 team in that conference from there. Just like South Carolina doesn't want to deal with Clemson, and you have Florida who would be like, why do we want Florida State being added? We're the number 1 SEC team right now.
What we've seen, though, because this is played a couple times, like Texas A&M, even though they weren't a flagship or a founding SEC member, they didn't want Texas. It didn't matter because it was better for the conference. USC clearly didn't want Oregon. It didn't matter. I think if it's better for the conference, so over even
I think that's dependent upon if the team that you're bringing in is better than the team that is there already. Right. And I think that's where Clemson could have an argument over South Carolina. The old ball coach is gone, and that school has not been the same. Florida over Florida State, I could see them having the power to be like, listen, we've legitimately been a quality team in the SEC. No, we're not letting them in. And I think that those 2 teams are pretty much equals if you kind of look at them overall for probably the last decade.
I can see that. Dom S says, it sucks. Should have just been Oregon, USC from the beginning. Adam Otto says, still meh on expansion. Keith Janke says, it's okay with Oregon and Washington joining the Big Ten. I think we should beat and not recruit both teams. The expansion might benefit Wisconsin if they bring back divisions. I think it – I don't see the huge benefit with Oregon. I just don't. But I've already explained my point on that.
I will say this. I think UCLA actually provides value, but they need to get the right coach in there. Like, that is a school that can legitimately be a top 10 program if they get the right set of circumstances there. Number 1, they needed to get to the Big Ten financially. because the school is hurting from a an athletics standpoint. This is a big deal for them. And then they need a coach that legitimately moves the needle in terms of recruiting. If they start pulling in studs in recruiting, they will be a problem. We've seen UCLA. It's been a long time, but we've seen UCLA be a really good team.
And they're going to get. Listen, coming to the Big Ten, part of the reason you come here is to get the resources to help build NIL departments, recruiting. I mean, they're going to get better, barring disastrous coaching hires. Let's see a couple more here. What was this question here? Mitch Ames says, was supposed to say Missouri gets you the St. Louis and Kansas City markets. Missouri tried to get into the Big Ten, and the Big Ten said no. So that ship has sailed. It is what it is. Now, I'm not saying those markets are terrible. Missouri doesn't have enough pull.
And I don't think they're a good enough team. They just aren't. Like, they've had a couple of solid years in the SEC, but they basically beat up on the bad teams that are in the SEC, and that's their ceiling. It's kind of like, Vanderbilt or Kentucky or whoever. They might pull an upset here or there, but they're really basically an 8-4 type team.
At a ceiling. So, all right, I think we'll wrap it up there. Mark D finished it off here, says, comment on the link. We'll finish off here, said Notre Dame running out of teams to play. Let's see how much NBC ponies up for their next TV contract. Justin, that's to your point. I do really like a weird conspiracy theory where the Big Ten just kept hitting their head against the wall, like Notre Dame. And finally they're like, you know what if we just steal every team that Notre Dame plays?
Well, I mean, that's kind of what I said. Like, it would be so easy. Like, that would have been the reason to take both USC and Stanford. Oh, these are two of your traditional rivals? Cool. We're taking them from you. We're not going to let them play you unless you come into the conference.
The only problem is then we have Stanford in the conference, which, again, from an academic point, I get.
Yeah, they're the big loser. That's the one thing that isn't getting talked about enough. I could see Stanford going independent because I think it's almost the best fit for them. They really don't have a conference that they fit other than academically being in the Big Ten. And the same with Cal. Like, they both fit the academic profile of the Big Ten. They do not fit the athletic profile right now.
That's the problem. Yeah. All right, we'll wrap it up there. Obviously, a bunch more content coming up. Practice. We have linebackers preview coming up. I still have an interview with Raphael Dunn's head coach. Colin Cubberley is on the docket. Mandel's on the docket. So a lot more content coming up. Appreciate everybody coming in. Justin, appreciate the discussion. I think your points are very well thought out on this. So maybe I'll change my mind 1% and come a little closer to the middle.
Anyway. All right, 99-1. There we go.
On Wisconsin, we're going to talk to everybody tomorrow.